The biggest threat to your career isn't failure, it's hiding. Listen, talented, capable, high achieving people are invisible in their workplaces because they choose to hide and shrink back. And listen, it's costing them more than they realize. Now, if that sounds like you, and it used to be me, it's time to stop playing small. If you don't know who I am, my name is Tami Shiambade, and I'm here to help high achievers reclaim their presence, amplify their influence, and lead with visibility and impact. See, recently I was at an event. I was talking with a group of high achieving women. These women were leaders in their own rights, doing amazing things in their organizations and in their careers and in their communities. And I started to talk to them about something that's been on my mind lately, and it's the idea of visibility. And I asked them, how do y'all feel with being seen? And you heard all of these women say, you know what, I just like to work in the background, and I don't really like to be at the forefront. I leave that for somebody else. One brave lady at the table said, this year I've decided that I'm going to go for whatever is mine. And I used to struggle with this, but I think that God is leading me into positions of more visibility, and I'm going to embrace it. And I completely connected with this woman because that's where I've been. See, one of the things that we've been taught, right, is that it's good to be humble and it's good to hide because you don't want to ask for light to shine on you. But here's the thing. I don't think that's true humility. I don't think humility is asking you to deny your ability to help, right? I think humility is not thinking that you're better than everyone else, but I don't think it means that you suppress your leadership and that you suppress your influence. But I think that's what many of us have been taught to do. See, here's the paradox. There are a ton of high achieving people who actually want to impact their organizations, want to help, and who are skilled and capable. Yet they choose to stay in the background and their organizations suffer, they suffer, and their communities suffer. And so I started to ask myself, why do we suppress our leadership? Why do we hide, right? This is something that I've gone through. Throughout my career, I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, when I was in high school, one of my teachers said, Tami, you're the type of person who would be part of a cabinet, but you would choose to be the secretary and do all of the work for the president. And she wasn't wrong, right? I was that person who really chose to hide because, again, you want to be humble and you're scared. Hey, what if they think I'm doing the most? What if I get misunderstood? What if I get labeled incorrectly, right? You're scared of being judged. You might also have some cultural conditioning. Maybe it's the communities that you've been in. Maybe it's a religious conditioning, right? But you've been taught that humility means silence. And here's another big one. Maybe it's perfectionism, right? Like, I will speak up when I'm 100% sure, when I have 100% right, when I have all the data, all the facts, all of my, T's crossed and my I's dotted. That's when I'll speak up. But in all of this, guess what? There's this gap that you were made to fill. And so when you suppress that portion of your voice, when you hide, you lose the opportunity to help the people you were called to help. Right? Some of this visibility isn't about being vain. It's about being a leader. And I know that scares a lot of you because you say, I'm not a leader, but leadership is just influence. At least that's what John C. Maxwell says. And that's one of my favorite speakers and influencers when it comes to leadership. See, he studied it. And I have found what he said to be true. Leadership is not something to be scared of. It's something that we're all called to in different spaces. And so what you need to do and what I need to do is we find our spaces where we're called to influence, where we're called to lead. When we don't, one of the things that happens is we lose the opportunity to influence people. So here's one of the things that I've been finding that's been happening in a lot of people's workplaces. They speak with me and they find that they're being overlooked for opportunities. And they're finding that other people who are not as equipped and as capable are getting those opportunities, right? And it hurts their team, and it hurts their efficiency, and it hurts the people they're called to serve. So the people who are not the most qualified get the positions, right? Because people follow the visible leader, not the one that's hiding, not the one that's decided to suppress their leadership. Here's another thing that happens that people don't realize is that when you suppress your leadership, when you suppress your voice, you end up feeling unfulfilled and stuck, right? You have this tension on the inside of you and you know that you're supposed to do more, but you're scared. That is uncomfortable. That was one of the things that forced me to kind of break out of my shell in certain areas, was I could feel this tension and it just became really uncomfortable. Because on the other side of that was I realized I was missing opportunities for growth. I wanted to grow my influence. I wanted to grow the impact of the work I was doing. But because I was choosing to hide, I missed those opportunities. Because here's the thing, real growth happens outside of your comfort zone. So let's talk really quickly about how to break free. Number one, I want you to challenge your narrative. Why do you believe staying quiet is safer? I also want you to ask yourself, how well is staying quiet serving you and your goals? Then I want you to redefine presence. I don't want you to think about it as being vanity or being volume, but I want you to think about it as showing up with intention, right? Understanding that you can help and choosing to step up to the plate. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to take a bold step. I want you to practice one act of visible leadership this week. Maybe that means you speak up at a meeting and you say, have you considered looking at this from this perspective? Maybe it's you sharing an observation that you've made about your industry on social media, writing up a quick post on LinkedIn, where you're simply sharing your thoughts, sharing your observations, right? And being visible about the things that you've seen. Listen, if you are someone who has been in the situations where I've been, where you've suppressed your own leadership, it might be time to break free. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in my private space called The Vault. I'll leave a link to that below, so subscribe so that you can hear more of our thoughts about how to break free from this. Until next time, bye.